So this is Photoshop Basics Part 3, and we're going to continue to talk about working on this image here. I'm going to come over to this nice little thumbs up image, and again, we are going to have a color mode issue here, so we'll come up to the menu bar, that's the name of this bar up here at the top, and change the mode once again to RGB color. Now that we've got this going on, we can do some other things to this particular image. One main thing I want to do is I'd like to flip it the other direction. So in order to do that, you're going to use the image pull down menu. And even though you're not rotating it, that's where this is located. And it's called flip horizontal. And that flips it the other direction. So that is one of the nice little features there, that you can flip it around like so for making a mirror image. Other things that you can do would be to change or remove the color. Also under the image menu under adjustments. The only adjustments we've really used so far in this unit have been black and white. The black and white adjustment is going to allow us to change this to black and white. Now remember, these hands are red. There are sliders here that let you adjust how black or white certain areas are. So see, those are red, and anything that's red in the picture, I can affect its black and white value with the red slider. You can also tint images from this same spot. So even though you have to go to black and white, you can still make it all shades of one color. So if you wanted it to have a blue or red all through it, you can do that. Saturation refers to how heavy the color is. So if you pull that up really high, it's going to be very, very, very red, and the more muted that you'd like it, you'd pull back that saturation so it's not so bright. And then again, I can go ahead and press OK. Also through the image menu, as we did before, you can change the image size or the canvas size. And I'll change the image size here to make this about half as big, 200 pixels. And then again, undock it and drag over with the move tool, or press V and drag over. So that's basically how to do those other things all through that image menu. And then of course, if we wanted to add any layer styles, we could do that as well. Now one thing that I haven't mentioned is if you do have multiple images open and you'd like to be able to see them all at one time, you can change your view. So up here, you can choose to zoom in or out or fit on the screen. But whenever you want multiple windows to be positioned, you're going to go to the window menu. And then there's arrange. And so, for instance, tile will make it so that they're all on the screen at the same time. Now, they're at various levels of zoom, but it'll put them all on the screen at the same time. Also under window, you could float them all back into their tabs. That's how it was before. So that's all under window arrange. I can float them all into windows, so none of them are tabbed as well. So you've just got all kinds of different options. Usually if I'm dealing with a lot of pictures at once, I'll tile, so then I can like drag everything I need over, and then I can close those out and go full screen with the one that I need. And then of course you can always consolidate them back to tabs. So that's again under window and arrange. And that's pretty handy as well. All right, back to dealing with the transform controls. We already mentioned that Control-T transforms, and we already mentioned that you can rotate and you can resize as long as you hold Shift. You won't mess it up using those transform controls. However, one thing we haven't mentioned is that you can also mirror using your transform control by right-clicking. So if you've already drug it over and then you decide you want it the other direction, you can right-click while you've got transform controls and flip it back the other direction. And then if I'm like, nah, both of those guys are flipped, I don't like it, I can flip it back. So you don't necessarily have to flip it before you drag it over. You can use your transform controls to flip it. And then remember, 3 different ways to accept transformation: enter, double-click, or press that check mark up at the top. All right, finally, I'm going to go ahead and add a shape. As we mentioned, any of these that have a little notch added to them mean there's more to it. So our shapes button looks like a rectangle initially. If you want additional shapes, there's all of these, or custom. Custom is going to let you pick shapes from a drop-down menu, and you can also click the play button to access additional shapes. So for instance, I could take this one called symbols and replace. And then I've got different symbols here. I'm going to double click this one, choose a color. I'll just take this pink, purple, and then draw. And you get a little plus sign, and you can draw just like in PowerPoint. To change the color, you double click the color box, and then if I wanted a paler shade, I could do so. Now let's add an extra layer style here. The FX button is the layer styles button. We've already talked about drop shadow. We've already talked about stroke. There's also an inner shadow if you wanted to have a shadow on the inside, so that's an option. There's an outer glow, which is the opposite of a drop shadow because it actually gives you a glow, so whenever you size it up, you can have a glow. If you have a darker background, a lot of times you'll go with a glow instead of a shadow. And then there's additionally bevel and emboss. That's one of my favorites. What a bevel does is it kind of gives it a 3D look, like buttons on web pages. So that's bevel. So those are some pretty common ones. Drop shadow, the glows, bevel, and stroke are going to be your most common layer styles. And then we hit OK. Now, the shapes initially sort of look like they have a stroke around them, but they don't. If you click off the layer, you won't see that line. All right, this takes care of part 3 here on Photoshop Basics.